So this weekend we have an interesting domestic clash between the Sandman Lewis Ritson and Ohara Two Tanks Davies. This is a fight that very much flew under my radar. I only realised it was happening this weekend when I saw Joe Stunner's video on it. I do think that this one, even though it's a fairly low key fight, has the potential to be actually quite a competitive scrap. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Let's come to a conclusion. So with these two guys, I feel like they are of contrasting styles. Lewis Ritson is someone who really came into his own around 2018, 2019, where he was doing a good job of selling out venues in Newcastle, which is his hometown. And he was called the Sandman for a reason. It's because there was a good chance that he'd put his opponent to sleep. Lewis Ritson, I'd consider him to be the more talented out of these two, at least offensively. Defensively, I think he can be actually quite poor, and he has a bad habit of being drawn into a fight. And a lot of the time, when he was fighting a certain level of opposition, he would be able to get away with it because he'd just be able to overpower them. Because, you know, for all his faults, he is a decent puncher, and with both hands as well. But whenever he kind of stepped up to that Euro level, he'd usually be outboxed and sometimes even outfought as well. We saw that against Jeremiah Ponce, who wasn't the best boxer himself, but he was a tough Argentine fighter who, even though he wasn't the biggest puncher, he made up for his lack of punch power with volume and accuracy, and he hurt Lewis Ritson from very early on in that fight. I think it was even the first round, and you can actually hear in the corner Lewis Ritson's trainer asked him, "What's his power like?" He said his power's, it's nothing, but he caught me with a body shot. And yeah, I agree with that assessment. Ponce isn't the biggest puncher, but he makes up for it with that volume, with that accuracy, as I say. And ultimately, Lewis Ritson lost that fight. And so Lewis Ritson, good offensively, but can be outworked, can be outboxed at long range. But if he gets into his wheelhouse, which is at up close, he can be quite effective. Lewis Ritson is someone with short power. Not only does he have power in both his left and right hand, but he doesn't need very much space. And I feel like we saw a good example of this, I remember, against Paul Hyland Jr. I think Paul Hyland Jr. in that fight was down a few times, but it may have been the shot that finished the fight. It was just this very short, sweet, compact right hand over the top as Hyland was moving to his left and just caught him flush and completely splattered him. So Lewis Ritson, very good up close. I don't want to say like he's a world-class inside fighter, but that's where I feel he's most effective. Ohara Davies, on the other hand, is someone who's much more effective at long range. If you look at the build of Ohara Davies, even though he's about 5'7", he has this very long, gangly build. He's basically built like a spider because his body's really small, but his arms and legs are just super long and thin. And he can use that arm length to his advantage because he's so short, but he just has these freakishly long arms. A lot of times he's going in against guys who are much taller than him, but he's commanding the fight at long range with a quite a thudding and accurate jab. And he does that quite well. If I want to describe Ohara Davies' style, he does a good job of kind of hiding behind that long reach and working his way around the ring. It is a little bit ungainly, a little bit uncoordinated at times, but he can be a difficult guy to reach if you're not entirely switched on, or if you're not that skilled at long range yourself. And Ohara Davies does have power of his own. I'd say that his power is a bit more one-handed. He's a bit more of a right-handed puncher. He will attempt to throw power punches with the left, but you can just kind of see that it's not really his money punch. He's not going to do as much damage with his left hand as he will with his right hand. And he can throw that right hand as a counter, or he can lead with it. So it shows a bit of dexterity there. Sometimes he's been able to use that right hand as a counter, and it's like because his arms are so long, the timing's a little bit off because it has to travel a bit. Like the trajectory, it's a bit weird, so it's almost like that timing catches opponents off. And Ohara Davies, he will attempt sometimes to fight at mid and close range, but it's certainly not where he's most effective. Um, However, defensively, I think he's a bit better than Ritson in that regard because, and this might seem insignificant, but I feel like Ohara Davies makes it work because his body is so small, but his arms are so long. When he kind of shells up close, he does a good job of kind of protecting all his vulnerable areas, and so that can be frustrating to get through. He will attempt to work sometimes, but the because of his build, his arm length, he's just not able to make his shots that compact. I just don't feel like he has the coordination, like the body control's not there, and sometimes it's you can see how a fighter like Josh Taylor, who handed Ohara Davies his first loss, you could see how it was like the perfect style for Josh Taylor to punch in between Ohara Davies because Josh Taylor much more compact. Even though he's a taller man, his technique is a lot tighter. The trajectory of his shots is a lot tighter, and he was just able to catch Ohara in between his own punches. I feel like Ritson could potentially do the same in this fight, um, and I'm almost certain that Ohara Davies is going to look to keep it at long range because even though he's the shorter man compared to Lewis Ritson, I'm near certain that he has much longer arms and therefore probably has a better ring coverage, to quote Dwyer. Um, Lewis Ritson at long range, not the most active, can look a bit stagnant in his guards. He does have a good jab, that's the thing. He's got quite an accurate and thudding jab, just doesn't really use it enough and can sometimes just resign himself to putting his gloves up, looking to walk forward. And against someone like Ohara Davies, I don't know if you're going to be able to get away with that because even if Ohara Davies doesn't tag him with anything, as long as he can keep him honest, he can probably just win enough rounds over the course of the fight. However, when it comes to Davies, sometimes if he's in with an opponent who's able to bypass his jab, he will sometimes resort to using like a sweeping left hook. And because the trajectory on his punches isn't very tight, he can sometimes swing himself out of position. And then numerous times I've seen opponents capitalize on that and they follow up with a jab or a right hand over the top. So you can get to Davies, but you need to have a certain amount of skill. I'm not sure if Lewis Ritson has that skill. So I'm actually seeing this as a tough prediction. Even though I see Lewis Ritson as the more talented fighter, at least offensively, I think Ohara Davies, even though he fights in a bit more of a reserved fashion, I don't think he's as talented. I think stylistically, he may just be able to cause Lewis Ritson problems. I think both guys have the power to hurt each other. As I say, Lewis Ritson's power is a bit more two-handed. Davies is a bit more right-hand happy with his power. I see this as being a distance fight. If it doesn't go the distance, I think it'll go quite a few rounds. I don't see either man winning this fight early, not unless they've slipped considerably from previous form. So if I'm pressed for a prediction, I'm actually going to go with Ohara Davies on a decision, probably a split decision. I don't see this being like a wide decision in favour of anyone. I think probably Ohara Davies, split decision or unanimous decision by like 1 or 2 rounds maybe. If I'm envisaging how the fight unfolds, I think Ohara Davies will do a decent job of keeping the fight going at quite a conservative pace early on, probably just nicking the rounds with activity at long range, maybe not even landing anything considerable, probably just the jab. Lewis Ritson probably struggling to get into range, struggling to work around that jab, but then maybe getting to the halfway point and realising that he needs to step on the gas and maybe just being willing to take one to land one almost. So I think this is going to start off being an Ohara Davies fight at long range, and very slowly but surely turn into a bit more of an up close battle. But I think both guys are tough enough at this stage of their careers to see the final bell, and I think Ohara Davies might just see this one out on a close decision, as I say. So yeah, an interesting fight. Hopefully it's entertaining, because Ohara Davies in particular has been in some stinkers. I just, whenever I hear Ohara Davies' name and I know he's fighting, I get momentary flashbacks to the Jack Catterall fight. I had the misfortune of watching that one live, and what a waste of time that was. That was a horrible fight to watch. But yeah, hopefully this one's an entertaining fight. Hopefully both guys leave it all in the ring, because they are in a bit of a weird stage of their careers now, because they've kind of been out in the wilderness, I guess you could say. Both guys not the draws they once were, at least from what I see. Maybe Lewis Ritson fighting in Newcastle can still sell out with ease, but I think this is for the WBA final eliminator, I believe. Both guys want to get into title contention and you know, secure some big paydays and maybe some title shots before they call it a day. So that's my prediction for this fight. As I say, hopefully it's a good one. Who do you think's going to win? Leave it down below. Who you picking and why? And I'll get back to you. But for now, thanks for listening, people, and I'll catch you in the next video.